This weekend marks the start of F1's new technological era, with the Bahrain Grand Prix providing the first opportunities for teams to race their revamped cars. F1's rulemakers have made a concerted effort to reduce the technical freedoms available to teams, pushing for closer competition while maintaining the goal of making cars easier to follow so on-track battles are improved. Nonetheless, the FIA was surprised to see Formula One teams such as Red Bull and Mercedes opt for such radical and diverse sidepod solutions under the new regulations. So what are these radical designs, and is it possible that some of them will be banned before the season opening race in Bahrain? Welcome to F1 Tech, where we explore the inner workings of one of the most intensely exciting, death-defying sports in the world. Join us as we dive deep into the drivers, teams, and cars of Formula One. If you'd like to see more, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon. But now, let's get started. There were some concerns that the new regulations would result in all the cars looking the same. But teams and drivers were pleasantly surprised to see so much variety during the launches and pre-season testing. One of the most significant areas where teams diverged was in sidepod design. Mercedes arrived at the second test with a radical slimline solution, whereas Ferrari has a much wider dipping design. Nikolas Tombazis, the FIA's head of single-seater matters, explained how his team was very precious about certain areas of the cars that were the most sensitive aerodynamically in creating dirty air. We did consciously free up the sidepods more than we did other areas. We could easily have written rules for the sidepods that would have been all the same if we wanted to. We didn't do that because we felt it was an opportunity. So in that respect, that wasn't totally random that happened with the sidepods. If you asked me whether I expected to see the variety of solutions that teams produced in the sidepods, then no, they exceeded what I was imagining, I must say. When Mercedes debuted its radical new design at the start of the second test in Bahrain, it raised questions about whether it was within the spirit of the regulations after quotes attributed to Red Bull boss Christian Horner surfaced. F1 Motorsport boss Ross Brawn admitted that his team of engineers who devised F1's new technical regulations for 2022 to improve overtaking had not considered Mercedes' approach to sidepods. There's no doubt that the Mercedes concept we didn't anticipate, I don't think. It's a very extreme interpretation of the regulation, and I think there's going to be, inevitably, a lot of debate about their interpretation, and that's what happens with new regs. Mercedes is now taking the zero sidepods concept to its logical conclusion by tapering the bodywork around the radiators. The design is intended to amplify the Coanda effect on the bodywork by forming an air chute that directs the flow of the upper part of the body towards the upper edge of the floor and the diffuser. The new sides are attempting to capitalize on this concept by combining less resistance with a sidepod front section that's extremely narrow. In comparison to previous specifications, the cooling inlets in the new Bahrain specification have an almost inverted shape, with a greater width at the bottom and a narrower width at the top. Mercedes investigated extreme aerodynamic shapes in order to reduce drag coefficients, occupy less lateral space for the air, and ensure a full-bodied flow of air above the floor. This should also result in a greater pressure difference between the air flowing above the floor and the high-energy air flowing through the Venturi tunnels. Ferrari, on the other hand, appears to take the exact opposite approach with relatively massive side bodywork. Ferrari's airflow management is aimed at the car's highest point. The shape of the hollowed-out car body, where the cooling openings are, is specifically designed to bring the airflow under the rear wing, right where the beam wing is. Maranello's aerodynamicists prioritized keeping the flows along the sides separate and free of downwashing. Unlike other teams that have used high sides, such as Aston Martin, Alpine, and Alfa Romeo, Ferrari does not tighten the sides at the lower part, and they always remain fairly regular and square. Ferrari appears to be favoring drag reduction as much as possible, interfering with the flow of air in the upper part of the engine cover as little as possible. Red Bull is another prominent team that's gone with a dramatic sidepod design, completing F1's top team trifecta. The team went with an aggressive front undercut, which became one of the major technical talking points of the 2022 Formula One preseason. The design is attempting to do what all F1 teams are doing with their sidepods, but it's only one interpretation of it. It all comes down to ensuring high quality, high speed airflow to the rear of the car, and maximizing ground effect aero by sealing the underfloor. With all of these designs catching attention, and in an era when regulations are especially stringent, one might wonder if any of these radical designs will be outlawed before the Bahrain race. So we return to Tombazis, who stated that the FIA's mantra of protecting the spirit of the regulations is about being able to react more easily to correcting regulations rather than going out and saying a car is illegal. I don't think teams designed a car in any particular way just because they liked us. They still made what they think is the fastest car and the best interpretation. They worked really hard on the regulations like one would expect them to do. I think, by and large, the regulations were reasonably well written. Some areas were not perfect and will be tweaked in the future. We still have to follow the governance. The governance has voting and so on. We don't pluck it out of thin air and say there are new regulations. Surprisingly, one of the most contentious issues is not the sidepods, but rather something that may be the most overlooked aspect of the car: the mirrors. Mercedes reworked the arrangement surrounding its mirrors as part of the sidepods overhaul that it introduced on its W13. This included heavily sculpted mounts to aid in the feeding of vanes in the cockpit's side impact structures. Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto was the first to question Mercedes' approach, pointing out that the mirror design was not intended to exploit any aerodynamic advantage. On the mirrors, I am somehow surprised. I find them quite surprising, and it's something that we were not expecting. I think in the spirit of that, it's something that I think for the future needs to be addressed. Already in the past, we always argued the mirrors should not have any aero purpose. They should be there just to look behind. I think that the way they've designed the car, certainly there is a significant aero purpose in the mirror itself. I think it's something that we need to stop for the future, no doubts, because the risk is that will come in the future that all the teams will start designing mirrors that will look like spaceships. I don't think that that's what we're looking for as F1. I'm not arguing against the idea. I think they found a solution that's interesting, but I think in the spirit of what we intend to do, certainly for the future, is something that we need to discuss. Surprisingly, while Binotto has concerns about the Mercedes mirrors, he has no complaints about the way the sidepods have been designed. I think first, looking at the Mercedes car, no doubt it's a great car. Good concept, quite different to the one we got. I think what is interesting is the layout and the sidepods again. On the legality overall, I don't think that we have any doubt. It's gone through a process, and the FIA is certainly the one which is responsible for policing and making sure it's fully legal. And I don't think Mercedes is doing something illegal as well. The design and engineering solutions we've seen from teams are amazing, with all three of the top teams implementing completely different approaches to address the same issues. What will the FIA's reaction be? Well, it's unlikely that anything will be done. The consensus among team principals appears to be that, for the time being, everyone is following the rules when it comes to the sidepods. So which design will come out on top in the end? We'll have to wait for an answer to that. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and don't forget to click the notification bell to be notified of future uploads. Which team's sidepod design intrigues you the most? And do you believe the big differences in design will contribute to big differences in lap time once we get racing? Leave your thoughts in the comment section, and we'll see you later on F1 Tech.